Emma never planned to spend her Saturday morning in her sister's cafe. Her weekends were usually quiet. She liked to catch up on reading, do a little grocery shopping, and sometimes go for a walk in the park near her apartment. But that morning, her phone rang earlier than usual. It was her younger sister, Lily, sounding weak and unwell. "Emma, I hate to ask this, but I need your help. I can't get out of bed. The cafe opens in an hour, and I don't have anyone else to cover my shift. Could you please fill in for me?" Emma held the phone to her ear, sitting up slowly. She looked around at her neat but silent living room. She had never worked at the cafe before, at least not seriously. Sure, she'd help Lily now and then, dropping off boxes or washing dishes if things got really busy. But managing a shift? Taking orders? Talking to customers? That was Lily's world, not hers. Still, Emma couldn't say no. Family was family. Lily had poured her heart into that little cafe, and Emma admired her for it. So, with a sigh, she said, "All right, I'll do it. Just text me the details I need to know." After hanging up, Emma quickly got dressed. She chose a simple blouse and jeans, hoping it would look presentable enough. She tied her hair back into a loose ponytail and slipped on comfortable shoes. On her way out, she grabbed her bag, still half wondering if she was making a mistake. The cafe was only a 15-minute walk away. As she approached, she noticed how warm and welcoming the little shop looked from the outside. The glass windows showed a row of wooden tables and chairs, all neatly arranged. There were little potted plants in the corners, and the chalkboard sign outside still carried Lily's cheerful handwriting: "Today's special, cinnamon latte and fresh blueberry muffins." Emma unlocked the door with the spare key Lily had given her years ago, though she had rarely used it. Inside, the smell of coffee beans and fresh bread filled the air. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. The morning light streamed through the windows, making the cafe glow softly. She set down her bag and looked around, reminding herself that this was only temporary. She just needed to get through a few hours, serve some coffee, and keep things running until closing time. Emma found the apron Lily kept behind the counter and slipped it on. It felt strange, like stepping into someone else's role. She took a moment to study the coffee machine, the register, and the menu. Lily had left a quick note with simple instructions: "Smile. Take orders. Don't worry if you make mistakes, the customers are kind." Emma smiled faintly. That was so like her sister, always optimistic, always trusting things would work out. Soon, the bell above the door jingled, and the first customer walked in. A middle-aged woman carrying a book gave Emma a friendly nod. "Good morning." Emma straightened up. "Good morning. What can I get for you today?" The woman ordered a cappuccino and a croissant, and though Emma's hands trembled a little, she managed to prepare the drink without spilling. When she placed it on the counter, the woman smiled warmly. "Thank you. You must be Lily's sister. I've seen you once or twice." Emma felt a small burst of relief. "Yes, just helping out today. My sister's not feeling well." "Well, you're doing just fine," the woman said before finding a table near the window. That little bit of encouragement made Emma feel lighter. She wasn't perfect at this, but maybe she could get through the day after all. One by one, more customers arrived. Some ordered their usual drinks without even looking at the menu, others asked questions about the muffins or the sandwiches. Most of them seemed to recognize her face, even if they didn't know her name. They smiled kindly, and some even asked about Lily, wishing her a quick recovery. Emma moved carefully behind the counter, learning as she went. The hiss of the coffee machine, the clinking of cups, the soft background music, it all created a rhythm that slowly started to feel familiar. She made small mistakes here and there, like giving the wrong change once or forgetting to warm up a pastry, but no one seemed upset. They laughed it off, and Emma apologized with a smile. As the morning went on, Emma began to notice details she had never paid attention to before. The cafe wasn't just a place to buy coffee, it was part of the neighborhood's daily life. A group of students came in, their laughter filling the air as they spread books across a table. An elderly man sat quietly in his usual corner, sipping tea and reading the newspaper. A mother with a toddler stopped by, and the child pressed his hands against the glass display case, fascinated by the muffins inside. Watching all this, Emma began to understand why Lily loved running the cafe so much. It wasn't only about coffee or pastries, it was about people, stories, and small moments that made the day feel brighter. Still, Emma couldn't shake her nervousness entirely. She kept glancing at the clock, counting the hours until she could return to her own quiet routine. But each time a customer thanked her, or smiled, she felt a little more connected to the place. Around mid-morning, when the cafe had settled into a steady hum of conversations and clinking cups, Emma noticed a man walk in. She barely looked up at first, focused on finishing a latte order. But when he chose a table 3, near the wall where old photographs of the cafe's early days hung, she caught herself staring for just a moment. There was something about the way he moved, calm but deliberate, as though he was familiar with the space. He didn't rush to order. Instead, he sat down, glanced at the photographs, and seemed lost in thought. Emma shook her head lightly, returning to the task at hand. He was just another customer, she told herself. Her job was to make sure everyone felt welcome and served. That was all. Yet a quiet curiosity began to stir in her, even though she didn't fully Emma wiped her hands on the apron as she glanced toward table 3 again. The man was still sitting there, his eyes fixed on the wall where black and white photographs of the cafe's early years were displayed. Most customers looked at the menu or their phones while waiting, but this man seemed entirely absorbed by those old frames. The photos were special to her family. They showed her father when he first opened the cafe, years before Emma was even born. There were pictures of him smiling proudly behind the counter, shaking hands with local friends, and standing outside the shop with her mother during the grand opening. To most people, the photos were just decoration. To Emma and Lily, they were memories. She wondered why this man looked at them with such intensity. He wasn't simply glancing, his gaze lingered, as if each photograph carried a secret only he could read. His posture was relaxed but thoughtful, and every so often, he tilted his head slightly, as if recalling something. Emma tried to distract herself by focusing on the orders piling up. A group of students had asked for iced drinks, a couple wanted sandwiches toasted, and another customer needed a takeaway box. She moved quickly, pouring drinks, ringing up the register, and delivering plates. Yet, even as she worked, her thoughts returned to the man at table 3. When she finally had a moment to breathe, she realized he hadn't approached the counter to place an order. Most people ordered as soon as they came in, but he had simply sat down. Now, after several minutes, he looked up and caught her eye. His expression was calm, and he gave a small, polite nod, like an unspoken request for service. Emma hesitated, then decided to go over with her notepad. She felt oddly nervous, though she had no reason to be. He was just a customer, after all. "Good morning," she said, approaching his table. "Would you like to order something?" The man looked up at her with a faint smile. His voice was steady, warm, yet with a trace of something deeper when he replied. "Yes, I'll have a black coffee. No sugar." Emma wrote it down, though it was simple enough to remember. "Of course. Anything else?" He shook his head. "That will do." She nodded politely and hurried back to the counter, though her mind was unsettled. His order was straightforward, but there was something about the way he spoke, as if his thoughts were elsewhere. As the coffee machine whirred, she glanced back at him again. He had returned to studying the photographs, his eyes tracing every detail. When she placed the cup of steaming black coffee in front of him, he murmured a quiet thank you and wrapped his hands around the mug as though it carried more than just warmth. Emma wanted to ask if he was new to the area, or if the cafe reminded him of something. But she reminded herself she wasn't really a barista. She was only filling in for Lily. Conversations with customers weren't her strength, she preferred the quiet comfort of her office work. So, she simply gave a polite smile and returned to the counter. Still, her thoughts didn't leave him. Over the next half hour, the cafe grew busier. The doorbell jingled again and again as customers came in for their late morning drinks. The chatter grew louder, the clinking of cups mixed with laughter, and Emma had little time to pause. She moved quickly, balancing trays, brewing drinks, and wiping counters. But every time she glanced toward table 3, she noticed the man hadn't touched his coffee much. He sipped it slowly, his eyes still drawn to the wall. His face carried a mixture of thoughtfulness and quiet sadness, though he tried to hide it behind a calm exterior. Emma began to feel a strange curiosity. Who was he? Why had he chosen that particular table? And why did he seem so deeply connected to the cafe's history? At one point, a student dropped her pen near his table, and as the girl bent to pick it up, Emma saw the man gently help by passing it back with a kind smile. His manner was polite, even gentle, but once the student left, his eyes immediately returned to the old photos. By noon, the rush began to slow. A few customers left with takeaway bags, and the cafe settled into a quieter rhythm. Emma finally allowed herself to lean against the counter, stretching her tired legs. She noticed the man at table 3 was still there, his coffee nearly untouched, though the steam had faded long ago. She debated with herself. Should she say something? Should she ignore it? After all, she was only filling in. Maybe Lily would know him. She seemed to know almost all the regulars by name. But something told Emma that this man wasn't just another regular. Summoning a little courage, she approached his table again. Is everything all right with your coffee? I can make you a fresh one if you'd like. The man looked up at her, his expression softening. No, thank you. It's fine. I wasn't here for the coffee, really. Emma frowned slightly. Oh? Then, what brings you here? He glanced at the photographs again before answering. Memories, he said quietly. I used to spend a lot of time in this cafe. Long ago. Emma blinked. That explained his attention to the wall, but it also raised more questions. She searched his face, trying to place him, but nothing came to mind. If he had been around in the past, why didn't she recognize him? The man must have noticed her curiosity because he added, Your father was the one who welcomed me here. Many years back. This place, it meant a lot to both of us. Emma felt her chest tighten at the mention of her father. He had passed away when she was still young, leaving behind only scattered memories and the cafe that Lily now ran. Few people ever spoke about him outside their family. To hear a stranger speak of him so naturally was unsettling, but also oddly comforting. I see, Emma said softly. You knew him, then? The man nodded. Yes. Very well. There was a silence between them, filled with unspoken thoughts. Emma felt the weight of his words settle into her heart. She wanted to ask more, to understand who this man really was, but a part of her hesitated. She wasn't sure she was ready for answers. Before she could speak again, the doorbell jingled and another group of customers entered, pulling her back to her duties. She excused herself politely and returned to the counter, though her mind stayed with the man at table 3. He wasn't just a customer. He was connected to her family, to the cafe, to a past she barely knew. And though he had only ordered a simple black coffee, Emma sensed that his reasons for being there went far deeper than anyone else in the room could see. Emma's hands moved quickly as she cleaned the counter, but her thoughts refused to stay with the task. The man at table 3 lingered in her mind like a melody she couldn't place. His calm presence, his careful study of the photographs, and the way he spoke about her father, it all left her restless with curiosity. She had grown used to hearing customers talk about the cafe. Many admired its warm atmosphere, the cozy wooden tables, or the pastries that Lily baked each morning. But very few ever spoke about her father, and almost no one claimed to have known him personally. For Emma, her father's memory was like a faded picture, precious but incomplete. He had passed away when she was young, and although her mother and Lily sometimes shared stories, there were large gaps Emma had never been able to fill. And now here was the stranger, speaking his name without hesitation. When the lunch rush picked up again, Emma forced herself to stay focused. A small group of office workers came in, filling the cafe with chatter about deadlines and meetings. A young couple arrived, sharing a slice of cake while laughing quietly together. A delivery driver stopped by for a quick espresso before hurrying back to his truck. Emma managed it all with practiced politeness, even though inside she kept glancing toward table 3. The man remained seated, sipping slowly at his coffee. Every so often, he looked around the cafe as though measuring how much had changed. Then his eyes would return to the wall of photographs. His face was unreadable, but Emma sensed a deep emotion hidden there. Finally, when the flow of customers slowed again, Emma gathered her courage. She wasn't usually the type to start conversations with strangers, but something inside her insisted she needed to know more. She took a deep breath and walked toward his table. "Excuse me," she began softly. "I couldn't help noticing that you've been looking at those photographs for a long time." The man glanced up at her. His eyes were calm, but they carried a certain depth, as though he had seen more than most people. "Yes," he said. "They bring back a lot of memories." Emma hesitated before asking, "You mentioned earlier that you knew my father. Can I ask, how did you know him?" For a moment, the man seemed to weigh his words. Then he leaned back slightly, his gaze drifting once more to the wall. "We were close friends," he said quietly. "Closer than most people realized. We spent many evenings right here in this cafe, talking about life, about dreams, about the future. Your father had big hopes for this place." Emma listened intently. She could almost picture her father sitting at that very table, laughing and talking late into the evening. She remembered faint fragments of his voice, though the years had blurred them. Hearing this man speak made those memories stir again. "What was he like?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man smiled faintly. "He was kind. Honest. He cared about people more than he cared about profit. He used to say that coffee was just an excuse. The real purpose of this cafe was to bring people together. And he was right. You can feel it, can't you? The warmth in the air, the way people smile here. It's his spirit that still lives in these walls." Emma's heart tightened at his words. She had always admired the cafe but had never thought of it in such a poetic way. For her, it had simply been her sister's business. But perhaps it was more than that. Still, a question lingered. If this man had been so close to her father, why had she never heard of him before? She voiced her thought carefully. "Forgive me, but I don't remember hearing about you. My mother and sister don't talk much about my father's friends." The man's expression grew thoughtful, even a little sad. "That doesn't surprise me. After your father passed, I drifted away. There were misunderstandings, distance, and time. Sometimes life pulls people apart even when they care about each other. I should have come back sooner. But it's not always easy to face the past." Emma studied him quietly. His voice carried sincerity, and she felt no reason to doubt him. Yet his words left her with more curiosity than answers. The cafe door opened again, and new customers walked in, pulling Emma back to her duties. She offered the man a polite nod before returning to the counter. but her mind continued to replay his words as she served drinks and wiped tables. Throughout the afternoon, the man remained at table 3, as though time itself had slowed for him. He didn't seem in a hurry to leave. Occasionally, he wrote a few notes in a small leather notebook he carried, but mostly, he sat in quiet reflection. Emma found herself glancing at him more often than she realized. There was something steady and grounding about his presence, even though she knew almost nothing about him. Customers came and went, laughter rose and fell, but the man at table 3 remained, like a calm anchor in the middle of the room. Later, when the cafe was less busy, Emma took a short break. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching the sunlight stretch across the wooden floor. She thought about what he had said, that her father believed the cafe's purpose was to bring people together. Perhaps today was proof of that. If she hadn't stepped in for Lily, she never would have met this man who carried pieces of her father's story. Her curiosity grew stronger with each passing moment. She wanted to know everything: how her father had laughed, what dreams he had shared, and why this man had chosen today, after so many years, to return. Finally, as the afternoon sun dipped lower, Emma decided she couldn't let him leave without asking more. She approached his table once again. "I hope you don't mind me asking," she said gently, "but, what made you come back today?" The man looked at her, his expression both gentle and serious. "I wasn't sure I would," he admitted. "I've walked past this cafe many times over the years, always wondering if I should go inside. Today, I finally did. Something told me it was time." Emma nodded slowly. She understood the weight of his words, though part of her still longed for clearer answers. "You know," the man added, "your father would be proud. I can see his spirit in you and your sister. This place is alive because of both of you." His words touched Emma more deeply than she expected. She felt her throat tighten, but she managed a small smile. "Thank you," she said softly. The man gave a slight nod and returned his gaze to the photographs once more. Emma stepped back, giving him space, but her heart was full of questions that would not rest. By the time the last rays of sunlight stretched through the windows, Emma knew one thing for certain: the man at table 3 was not just a customer. He was a link to her father's past, a piece of a story she had never fully known. And she could not let this chance slip away. The day wore on slowly, yet Emma hardly noticed the passing of time. Every sound in the cafe, the hum of the coffee machine, the soft clatter of cups, the low voices of customers, seemed to fade into the background whenever her eyes landed on table 3. The man remained there, steady and quiet, as if he belonged to the place in a way no one else did. Emma tried to concentrate on her duties, but her thoughts pulled her back to him. She could not stop wondering. Who exactly was he to her father? What stories did he carry? Why had he waited so long to return? As the afternoon slipped into early evening, the cafe began to empty. The students gathered their books, the couple finished their cake, and the elderly man folded his newspaper before heading home. Soon, only a few customers remained, and Emma realized the man at table 3 was among the last. She felt a nervous determination rise inside her. If she didn't ask him now, she might never get another chance. Lily would be back tomorrow, and Emma's unusual day as a barista would be over. The thought made her heart race. Taking a deep breath, she approached his table once more. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she began gently, "but I feel like there's more you want to say. You knew my father well, didn't you?" The man looked up, his eyes thoughtful. He studied her face for a moment before answering, as though deciding whether she was ready to hear the truth. Then he nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "I knew him better than most. We weren't just friends. We were partners." Emma blinked in surprise. "Partners?" He leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet but steady. "Your father and I started this cafe together. We built it from nothing. Every table, every chair, every brick of this place, we worked on it side by side. We shared the dream of creating a place where people could feel at home. Emma's eyes widened. She had never heard this before. Her family had always spoken of the cafe as her father's creation alone. The idea that someone else had been part of it all along was astonishing. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why didn't anyone tell me? Why don't we know about you?" The man's expression grew heavy with regret. "Because I left," he said simply. "There was a disagreement between your father and me. We had different ideas about how to move forward. I thought the cafe should expand, grow into something bigger. He believed it should stay small, personal, rooted in the community. We argued, and in the end, I walked away." Emma felt a mix of emotions: surprise, sadness, and even a little anger. "And you never came back?" "Not even when he," her voice caught before she could finish the sentence. The man lowered his gaze, his fingers tightening slightly around his coffee cup. "When he passed, I wanted to come. I stood outside this cafe many times, but I couldn't bring myself to walk in. I felt ashamed. Ashamed that I had abandoned him, ashamed that I hadn't made peace while I still had the chance. I thought, maybe the family wouldn't want me here anymore." Emma's heart softened as she listened. His voice carried a deep sincerity, and she could hear the weight of regret in every word. She imagined her father sitting with this man years ago, laughing, planning, dreaming. Then she imagined the argument that had torn them apart. Life had taken them in different directions, and now only memories remained. Quietly, Emma asked, "So why now? Why today?" The man looked at her with a faint, almost wistful smile. "Because time doesn't wait forever. I realized if I kept walking past, I would lose my chance completely. And when I came in, I saw you. You reminded me of him: the way you carry yourself, the way you care for this place even though it isn't really your world. It felt like he was here again, through you." Emma felt her throat tighten. She hadn't expected him to speak so openly, but his words touched her deeply. For years, she had struggled with the gap left by her father's absence, wishing she knew more about who he had been. And now, sitting across from her, was someone who could fill in those empty spaces. "I wish I had known you sooner," she admitted quietly. "I don't remember much about him. Just pieces. Smiles, stories my mother told, and the way Lily always says he believed in her. But I don't really know the full picture." The man nodded slowly. "I can tell you stories. Many stories. About how he worked late into the night, not for money, but because he loved the idea of people gathering here. About how he used to hum old songs while cleaning the counters. About how proud he was of you and your sister, even when you were very small. He carried your photographs in his wallet and showed them to every customer who would listen." Emma's eyes stung with tears she hadn't expected. She pressed her hand against the edge of the table, grounding herself. The image of her father proudly sharing her childhood picture with strangers was almost too much to bear, but it also filled her with warmth. "Thank you," she whispered. "I can't explain how much it means to hear this." The man gave a small nod. "It means a lot to me too. For years, I carried the weight of silence. But speaking of him now, it feels like I'm keeping his spirit alive again." They sat in quiet reflection for a moment, the cafe around them calm and peaceful. The sunlight had softened into evening gold, casting a warm glow across the wooden tables. It felt almost as though her father's presence lingered in the air, listening to their words. Finally, Emma asked one last question. "Do you regret leaving?" The man's eyes grew distant, and his answer came with quiet honesty. "Every day. I thought I was making the right choice at the time. But looking back, I see how much I lost. Your father's friendship was worth more than any dream of expansion. If I could go back, I would have chosen differently." Emma nodded, her heart heavy but also strangely lighter. She could see his pain, but she also recognized his courage in coming back, in finally facing the past he had avoided for so long. As the cafe neared closing time, she stood and said softly, "You don't have to carry that regret alone anymore. My father may not be here, but his cafe still is. And you're welcome here." For the first time that day, the man smiled fully. It was a smile touched with sadness, but also with relief. "Thank you," he said. "That means more than you know." When he finally left, Emma watched him go with a heart that was fuller than when the day had begun. She had come to the cafe reluctantly, filling in for her sister, expecting nothing more than spilled coffee and tired feet. Instead, she had found a piece of her father's story waiting for her at table 3. And she knew this was only the beginning. That night, long after she had locked the cafe door and turned off the lights, Emma lay awake in her bed. Her body was tired from the long day, her feet ached, her arms were sore from carrying trays, and her head felt heavy from hours of concentration. But her mind refused to rest. Every detail of her conversation with the man at table 3 replayed in her thoughts. The way his eyes softened when he spoke about her father. The sadness in his voice when he admitted his regrets. The stories he shared, little pieces of her father that she had never known. For the first time in years, Emma felt like she had met a part of her father again. It was as though the walls of the cafe had opened up and whispered secrets she had never heard. She closed her eyes, imagining her father laughing late into the night, humming old tunes, showing her childhood picture to strangers. She felt a warmth in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. The next morning, Emma woke early. She knew Lily would be well enough to return to the cafe, but she felt a strange pull to go with her. She wanted to see the man again, to ask more questions, to learn everything she could before he disappeared once more into silence. When she arrived at the cafe with Lily, she looked immediately to table 3. But the chair was empty. She tried to hide her disappointment as Lily unlocked the door and prepared the pastries for the morning rush. The air smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread again, the same comforting scent Emma had breathed in the day before. Customers soon trickled in, greeting Lily warmly, and Emma took her place behind the counter, helping where she could. But her eyes kept drifting to that table by the wall, half expecting to see him return. Hours passed, and still the chair remained empty. Finally, in the quiet lull after the morning rush, Emma told Lily everything. She described the man, his soft but steady voice, the way he had studied the photographs, and the truth he had revealed that he and their father had once been partners in building the cafe. Lily listened with wide eyes, her hands frozen around a dish towel. I don't remember him," she admitted. "But I was younger than you. Maybe Mom knows more." They decided to ask their mother that evening. And when they did, their mother's face softened with recognition. "Yes," she said, her voice quiet but sure. "I remember him well. He and your father were like brothers once. They built this cafe together with their own hands. But, they disagreed on how to run it. He left, and after that, your father rarely spoke of him. I think it hurt him too much." Emma and Lily sat in silence, letting the truth settle. The cafe they had grown up believing was their father's dream alone had, in fact, been built on a shared vision. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Emma asked gently. Their mother sighed. "Because I didn't want you to think less of your father. And perhaps, deep down, I hoped that man would come back one day. But he never did." Emma thought of the man's face as he confessed his regrets. She realized he had come back not for coffee, not for comfort, but to honor her father, and maybe to heal something inside himself. Over the next week, Emma visited the cafe every day, hoping to see him again. She even kept a small notebook in her bag, ready to write down any stories he might share. But the days passed, and the chair at table 3 remained empty. Still, Emma refused to give up hope. And one quiet Thursday afternoon, when the cafe was calm and the sunlight stretched warmly across the floor, the bell above the door jingled and there he was. Her heart lifted. She greeted him with a smile, not as nervous as before. "Welcome back." He smiled faintly. "I wasn't sure if I should come again." "I'm glad you did," Emma said. "There's so much I want to ask you. About him. About the cafe. About everything." This time, he didn't sit in silence. He told stories, long, winding tales of late nights spent scrubbing the counters with laughter, of arguments that ended with shared coffee, of the joy her father felt when the cafe welcomed its very first customer. He described how her father's hands were always rough from work but gentle when he held his daughters. He even shared small, funny memories like how her father once burned a whole batch of muffins and tried to give them away for free, only to laugh when even the neighborhood dogs refused them. Emma laughed too, tears shining in her eyes. She felt as though she were being given pieces of a puzzle she had been missing her whole life. Lily joined in sometimes, listening with wide-eyed wonder, asking questions and even bringing out old photographs from the back office. Together, they pieced together a fuller picture of their father, not just as a parent, but as a dreamer, a builder, and a friend. The man never asked for anything in return. He simply shared, quietly and steadily, as if passing down a legacy that had been locked away for too long. One evening, after the cafe closed, Emma sat at table 3 alone. She ran her fingers across the wooden surface, imagining her father and his friends sitting there years ago, planning their future. She realized that filling in for Lily that one morning had been no accident. It had been the doorway to something she hadn't even known she needed. Her father's friend, once a stranger, had become a bridge between past and present. Through him, Emma felt closer to her father than she had in years. And she also saw the cafe differently now. It wasn't just a shop her sister ran. It was a living memory, a place built on friendship, love, and dreams. As weeks turned into months, the man became a quiet presence at the cafe. He didn't come every day, but often enough that the sisters grew used to seeing him at table 3. Customers noticed too, but no one asked questions. He belonged there, in his own quiet way. One day, Emma asked him if he regretted never expanding the cafe, the way he had once dreamed. He smiled and shook his head. "No," he said. "Your father was right. This place was never meant to be big. It was meant to be personal. And look at it now, it's still standing, still loved. That's the greatest success of all." Emma thought about those words often. She carried them with her, not only in the cafe but in her own life. She realized that sometimes the greatest dreams aren't the ones that grow the biggest, but the ones that stay true to their purpose. And every time she passed table 3, she felt a quiet connection, a reminder that her father's story was still unfolding, through the cafe, through her sister, and now through her. She had filled in for her sick sister once, expecting nothing more than spilled coffee and nervous mistakes. But what she found was far greater, a man who wasn't just a customer, but the missing piece of a story she had longed to know. And in that discovery, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of peace, of belonging, and of love that stretched far beyond the walls of the little cafe.